One of my favorite parts of this region is the supper clubs. Growing up, whenever I visited Menomin, I never thought much about them. I was a kid, so I cared more about things like taco pizza or pancakes than I did about perfectly seared steak. It wasn't until I got older that I realized how special these places are. The dim lighting, the deep booths, the quiet murmur of conversations mixed with the clinking of cocktail glasses. It's the kind of atmosphere you don't find just anywhere. There are plenty of good ones in the area, but tonight, I'm sitting at the bar of my personal favorite. I'm halfway through my drink when the man sitting next to me makes a comment about the smell of popovers. He says it reminds him of a supper club that used to be here, one of the most famous in town. I know the place. I remember hearing about it, but I was too young to appreciate it when it was open. I was more focused on pancakes at Hattie Maxwell's at the time. But now? I kind of wish I'd had the chance to go as an adult. The man nods. He understands. The pancakes at Hattie Maxwell's, he says. I haven't thought about those in years. Used to be the best. He mentions that in high school he worked at another coffee shop, one that's also long gone. The conversation drifts to old restaurants and lost places, and at some point he remembers a story. Most people aren't big fans of old weird stories, he says, especially my kids. I tell him I love old weird stories. He grins and takes a sip of his drink. Then you might like this one. He starts by saying he didn't experience this firsthand, but a friend, former girlfriend of his did. It happened years ago, before the old supper club closed down. Back then, there was a house behind the restaurant with some unique features. There was talk of a spiral staircase, which always stuck with him. The house was empty at the time, but his friend would stop by occasionally to keep it clean. She wasn't sure of all the specifics, only that the owners paid her to look after it while it sat vacant. Nothing strange ever happened, until the day she found the door. It was a normal day. The friend went in, dusted a few things off, and decided to head downstairs to clean the lower level. That's when she noticed it, an extra door near the downstairs bathroom. A door that had never been there before. At first, she thought maybe she'd just never noticed it, but that didn't make sense. She'd been in and out of the house dozens of times and knew it well. And yet there it was. Plain as day. She stood there for a long moment before finally stepping forward and reaching for the handle. The door opened easily, almost too easily. Inside there was nothing but blackness. Not an unlit room, not a dark basement, just black. The man's friend hesitated, then took a cautious step inside. The air felt heavy. The silence felt too deep. She took another step, then another. And then something changed. The silence shifted. The air smelled different. The darkness around her began to feel less like an empty space, and more like something shifting. Then suddenly, she wasn't in the house anymore. She was standing in the dining room of the supper club. She turned, expecting to see the open door behind her, but there was nothing. No passage, no doorway. Just the wall of the dining room. The restaurant was completely empty. Silent. The tables were still set, glasses waiting to be filled, but there was no one there. She felt a sudden wave of unease. She didn't understand what had just happened, and she didn't want to stick around to figure it out. She walked out of the supper club, locking the door behind her. Then she went back to the house, locked that up too. She never told the owners what happened. But the next time she came back to clean, the door was gone. The man at the bar takes another sip of his drink. And that's it, he says. Not the most exciting story, but odd, right? I nod. Definitely odd. He glances down at his glass. Can't even check if it's real anymore. Both buildings are gone now. House, supper club, everything. I sit with that for a moment. It's strange. How places can vanish, how things can be lost to time, how doors can appear and disappear without a trace. I thank him for sharing the story. He just smiles. We all have at least one weird story, he says.